Welcome to Pursuit 365's home and lifestyle show, your go to destination for all things related to creating beautiful, harmonious, and inspired homes and lifestyles. I'm your host, Cara Lawson, an award winning South Surrey interior designer, and I'm thrilled to be your guide on this journey of exploration and inspiration. Today, I would like to introduce our special guest, Brandon Smith. Brandon Smith is a Brandon Smith is the co-founder of New Vision Projects Inc., headquartered in South Delta. New Visions Projects specializes in crafting high-performance custom homes, executing large-scale renovations, and enhancing commercial spaces throughout tenant improvements across the Greater Vancouver area. Expanding their operations to the Okanagan in 2017, their primary focus shifted to pioneering land development projects in that region. Embarking on his construction journey at just 17, Brandon dedicated himself to the industry ever since. He seizes every opportunity to share his knowledge, mentoring numerous young entrepreneurs. Brandon firmly believes that instilling passion for construction sector in the youth is essential for its enduring success. At the heart of their operation lies a simple yet powerful mission to construct unparalleled homes, leveraging the expertise of their exceptional team for discerning clients. New Visions Projects has received praise, securing several Georgie and Haven awards for their outstanding contributions to their field. The endeavors have also graced television screens featuring on shows like Game of Homes and HGTV's Worst to First. Welcome, Brandon. It's a pleasure to have you here today. How are you?
Hey, Kara, I'm good. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the warm introduction there. That was great.
I do my best. Today, we're going to talk about missing middle housing and Bill 44. What is the primary purpose or goal of Bill 44, and what issues or concerns is it aiming to address?
Yeah, so missing middle is a term. It's sort of a buzzword that people have been using, or it's a term that's been used to identify different structures, smaller housing units such as duplex, triplex, fourplex, that type of thing. And missing middle is a term that you're going to start hearing more and more. It's basically anything between a single family home and a 8-story building. So any sort of solution in between that is what missing middle housing typically refers to. So Bill 44 is a bill that's been put forward by governing bodies with the idea that we can remove red tape, we can start moving permits through faster, with the idea that we want to build more homes, whether it's going to be faster, cheaper, and with less restrictions. We're open now to looking at much more opportunity to put roofs over people's heads.
Okay. Can you explain what missing middle housing? Oh, yeah, well, you've explained what missing middle housing is and why it's important. But why is it important in the concept in addressing the housing crisis in Canada?
Yeah, so right now, primarily missing middle housing, like I said, we're looking at different opportunities and different solutions to build in different urban areas. We traditionally, the two main forms of housing that we've been looking at has been your single family home or has been your condo, apartment, high rise unit. And there hasn't really been a lot in between. Now, there are certainly townhouse complexes. There are mid-rise apartment buildings sort of all over Canada. But different cities are doing a better job than others, certainly, in implementing these into urban areas. So we're seeing people that are really struggling to either get into the market, or they're trying to find an opportunity to find a place to live. And there just really aren't a lot of solutions right now other than the condo or the single family home.
And so, would you describe that as the gap that fills between the Canadian housing market and why? And why would you say it's significant?
Well, it's certainly significant because it's what people are going to see happen faster and faster to their neighborhoods, and that's why people are they're starting to get concerned. People are getting excited about it, but also there is worry that neighborhoods are going to change.
Hmm.
So the unfortunately, the missing middle concept is going to really be a drop in the bucket as far as what we really need to house the amount of people that we are anticipating, right? CMHC is saying that we need about 3.5 to 4 million new houses being built by 2030. That's only 6 years away. So, and that's a lot of construction to happen over the course of the next 6 years in order to curb the so-called housing crisis that we are in. And missing middle housing, it is going to take time for sure. And it is a solution, but it is not the be all end all solution. The reason why we are having this conversation and the reason why people are talking about it so much is because it is what could potentially affect people's neighborhoods the most. And there is definitely some validity to that, but it's not all going to happen at once, and it's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen everywhere.
Right. And who do you think, in your opinion, it will affect the most positively?
Yeah, so there's missing middle housing has far more benefits than it and far more pros than it does cons. So the people that I find are it's going to affect and benefit most fall in typically to a few different categories. There's the categories of the keep your family at home, right? It's the parents or the middle-aged family that their parents are getting a little bit older. They don't want to put them into a care facility because care facilities cost on average between $6,500 a month on the low end up to $12,000 type thing a month to keep your parents there. So if there's an opportunity to spend more time with your parents in the golden years and give them a comfortable place to live that also provides them a bit of independence, this is a really good opportunity for that and for them. And then there's the keep your kids family. Like we know that housing prices are really expensive these days, and so many kids, and when I say kids I mean people that are they're not kids, they're young adults, they're moving off to college, they're graduating high school, they're getting into their career and looking to settle down, buy a house for the first time. the idea of even the idea of renting a house on their own is a really difficult concept for them to comprehend. And the idea of them even buying their first home is a dream that has been written off by so many youth. And it's really upsetting. So one of the categories that is going to really positively impact are going to be those people, those young adults that don't really have an opportunity, but they could potentially build something with their parents on a lot that they already own, whether it's going to be a coach home, a duplex, a laneway home that they can move into and pay rent back into the family pot and still have some independence of their own, right? Maybe it's not a unit that's attached to the house. Maybe they're not coming over for dinner with mom and dad every night because they do want to start a family. So there's some there's some generational wealth there that can be shared. And then there's going to be renters as well, right? Like this is people that are renting homes there's going to be more inventory. So it's going to start bringing the cost of rent down. And I don't think we're naive to think that people that are building laneway homes or people that are going to build a duplex or rental units on their property, they're still going to want to try and charge as much as they can to make up the costs that they've incurred to build. So they're going to try and get probably as much rent as they possibly can. But what it's going to do is free up older inventory in older buildings and give people an opportunity to move into those units, which are still good units. Like there's a lot of great older buildings, but we need to keep those costs down to even give people a chance to start, to find a place to rent. I mean, I remember not too long ago trying to rent out a basement suite, and there was a lineup down the road of people trying to get in. And without opportunities for housing, you find people are it's really starting to affect their mental health. They're often staying in jobs because they need the security. They're getting by paycheck to paycheck, and in a market where there's a huge demand for rent and limited supply, people that own those properties, or landlords or corporations that do own these units, are more and more stringent on who they choose. And if you don't have a good work history, a 2-year work history, a 3-year work history, and you're sort of jumping around all over the place, you don't even have a shot. So people are staying in their jobs longer, jobs that they don't like, jobs that they hate, just because they need a place to live and they need that consistent work history. And so I feel that is, that's really contributing a lot to people's, mental health. And certainly a lot of the areas that they are working, right? People are back at the office. Not everybody can work from home. A lot of the positions that a lot of people have, they still need a car to get to. So they're choosing to rent. Not really choosing, but they don't really have much of a choice at this point. They are renting further away from their area of employment, causing them to spend more time sitting in traffic, causing them to spend more time on their way home, merging in tunnel traffic or over bridge traffic. And it's really negatively affecting them, but they don't really have a choice. So they're looking for somewhere else. They need other solutions. And lastly, there's also going to be investors that are looking to, they're going to look to buy some land. Somebody needs to put up the money to actually build these things. So if you are in a position where you do have some money, there's a relatively good opportunity here to acquire some land or work on your own property that you currently own, subdivide or put up a fourplex and, really drive some rental income for yourself as well. So there are different categories where this is going to benefit, or different categories of people that I find that this is really going to benefit a lot from. The biggest concern that people have, though, is that it's going to impact their neighborhood, and it's going to impact the single family home that they already live in. And nobody wants, a monstrosity built next to them, and people are getting worried about parking and, all sorts of stuff already. So this is where a lot of that hesitancy comes in when people are talking about missing middle housing.
Right. And then what do you see as a primary factor contributing to the housing crisis in BC from a construction perspective?
Yeah, so I mean, initially this all started about in the 1940s, when the dream was everybody should own a single family home. There was far more available land than we have now, but the problem is there were very car centric solutions, right? Push out of the city, move into the suburbs, get a car, live further away, which then required bridges, which required tunnels and the ability to actually get to these locations, and is now driving people further and further away from cities, which was a great opportunity. But the problem is we've now started to run out of land and built ourselves into a corner. So the only solution really is to go up, and we don't have a lot of space that's currently zoned to go higher than 6 stories, other than downtown areas. And these suburban areas takes up the most land, where there has typically only allowed zoning for single family homes, maybe with suites, a single suite to be built. So we're starting to see now, yeah, and that's what Bill 44 is really all about, is trying to eliminate some of the red tape, relook at some of the zones that we have. I mean, in my city where I live, we have 70 plus different zones that you can build in effectively, between your single family residential, right up to your agricultural and industrial. There's 70 different zoning options.
Wow.
So trying to reduce that down to 10 or so, and say, okay, we're now going to be more flexible about how we look at building, where we look at building, and try and get permits out faster, so that we can, back to what I mentioned previously, about getting roofs over people's heads. We're also seeing a lot of trades moving further and further away, simply because they don't have an opportunity to start the same kind of life that their parents did, right? You decide you want to get into a career, you go to school, you come back, you maybe have some student debt, or you're maybe a few years into your career and you decide you want to start a family of your own, but you can't really afford to do that in the neighborhood that you grew up.
Right.
So where what we're seeing, how this is really affecting our industry, is we're starting to see a lot of trades move further and further away. Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned early in the intro where we're building up in the Okanagan, and there's in different areas, we're seeing a lot of trades that are moving up to these areas. And the houses that we're building up there, there's a lot of, all right, the finishing carpenters, they put stuff up and it doesn't quite look right, and they scratch their chin a little bit and they think, I can do better. And so they pull it down, they do it again, they play with it, they take the time, and you're really seeing a lot of that craftsmanship when people have the opportunity, when they're not so money focused. And in a
Mm.
lot of these areas where used to be able to pay good wages for blue collar work and trades work, they're now trying to make as much money as they can. And we're seeing a lot of these, smaller companies pop up, but they're very, they get in there quick. They need to make money as quick as they can. And so they overlook some of these details. And so this art of the art of the carpenter, the art of the electrician, the art of the stonemason, we're not seeing that as much anymore, because everybody is focused on making every penny count. And that means speed, that means that means doing it right the first time. And if you don't get it right the first time, there's no taking it back and redoing it, because that takes more time. And so that's a real struggle that we're seeing, is just a sort of a lack of tradespeople. And this is common throughout the whole industry, whether it's going to be residential, whether it's going to be commercial. It just really comes down to being able to pay a supporting living wage, and determining what that living wage is going to be is predicated on a lot of the cost of housing.
Right. Right. Wow. Very eye opening. How do you view the impact of government regulations and policies, and what changes would you recommend to policymakers from a construction industry standpoint?
Yeah, so back to the last point that I made about less zoning restrictions, that
Right.
is, and giving people an opportunity that own, maybe they own their property, but being more open to allowing them to build what they need on their property. So, because we have about 70 zones right now, which makes things very complicated, because there's very, very rigid guidelines that you need to follow if you need to if you're planning on building in these areas, which means that if you want to build something, if you want to build a duplex, or you want to build a triplex, or you want to build a laneway home, or you want to put 2 suites instead of 1 suite into your home, then there's very little inventory for you to choose from. And so by reducing some of these zoning restrictions and moving, allowing some more flexibility as to what people are going to build on their homes, as long as it's not going to affect, too much life safety, issues, or be too disruptive to, neighboring houses, then that is really what we're going to see happen. And I think there's quite a few government incentives right now, and they're looking at different solutions to work with, but they're not quite there. We have there's an incentive program that BC has put out that has said, if you are looking to build a secondary suite in your home, we will grant you $40,000. And I'm maybe you've heard of the grant that I'm referring to or not, but we're going to forgive $40,000 of the build cost that it takes you to put this suite in your home, which sounds like a great thing. But the caveat, it's free money. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But the caveat is, okay, well, it costs a heck of a lot more than 40 grand to put in a suite, for one, in most cases. Two, you only get paid that $40,000 if you're renting the suite out under market value. And the guidelines for what the government has detailed out as being market value is quite a bit lower than the average person could get if they put if they went through a rental company or put it up for rent on Marketplace, or whichever avenue they choose to go. So they're not making as much money off of it as they can, and so it deters people there. And the other thing, reason why this would be so beneficial would be if you could rent this back to family. So in the case where you have a daughter or a son that's going to school and they can't afford to have their own place while they're going through their education, then you could put in a suite where they have some of their own space, and then they could rent that space back to mom and dad at whatever the below market value is, or whatever that market value is, and take advantage of this credit that the government is offering. The problem is they're saying you can't rent it out to family. So you have to prove that you're renting it out to somebody else other than family at this point. And that's something that really it does need to change, because otherwise nobody's going to take advantage of it. And it's only paid back, this $40,000 grant is only paid back over the course of 5 years in 20% increments. So so if you are taking advantage of this $40,000 credit, then you are, you're effectively tying yourself down to that home for 5 years, and sometimes things change.
Right.
There are a lot of people that are trying to solve this issue. A lot of smaller or different organizations. Small Housing BC is one that's locally here. They're trying to run competitions for people that do have solutions. And I was lucky enough to sit on and read through a lot of the on the technical review committee, it was called, where we saw probably 300, close to 300 applications come in for people that thought that they had solutions to make housing faster, cheaper, more affordable, or how programs that they were going to be using to integrate Bill 44 or multiplex housing or missing middle housing into communities. So we saw everything across the board. People trying, and they're really trying to make a go at it. And CMHC had put up, it was I forget what it was, something like $6 million in grant money to kickstart. I'm sorry, it wasn't to kickstart. It had to be a viable company that was already showing that they were a business and that they had a solution that was worth working on. But they're trying to put forward money for people that do have solutions, and that's a really great place to start.
Right. Very interesting. I didn't know about that. Learning something new every day. How do you see the intersection between construction and interior design contributing to the solutions for the housing crisis? And what collaboration approaches do you think are most effective?
Yeah, so great question. Now this comes back almost to my comment about people being afraid of how this is going to affect their neighborhood, right? People don't want these huge units going up, or what they perceive to be huge units, fourplexes, triplexes, being built next to them. Right? There's always the not in my backyard folk that are gonna they just aren't gonna want it. But if you're working with an intelligent designer and a thoughtful contractor, and you're going to have an opportunity to design units that are going to fit the neighborhood, and a lot of that is going to take into consideration. You're going to talk to the neighbors. You're going to talk to them about what you're proposing. Probably bring forward a few options, knowing that you have all right to build on your property what you want to build, but the way that we are going to get through this together is just good old fashioned communication. And people want to know that if you're putting up a building next to their house, which is going to have more people, they want to guarantee that the house is going to look good. They want to know that it's going to be energy efficient. It's going to benefit their home and increase their property value, and you're not going to have a lot of riffraff. So I think that by connecting intelligent interior designers or architects and good builders, you're not going to have a problem. But that's where a lot of the collaboration is gonna come in. And so it's very right now it's a very touchy subject. So yeah, it's gonna have to be a thoughtful approach for sure.
Yeah, good answer. What's your view on the current infrastructure, and do you believe it will support or hinder the efforts of the crisis, and particularly in terms of transportation, schools, and community amenities?
Well, transportation is always something that comes up in discussion when we talk about this. There's no doubt about it.
Hmm.
There is no doubt that if we are expecting more people, then we're going to either have more cars on the road, or we're going to need to give them a better option. And right now, in my town where I live, that's a topic of conversation as well. And the truth is, we are number 47 on or ish on TransLink's radar right now as far as needing new systems, because the buses just aren't being used to their full capacity, right? And until we're at 20% over capacity, the reality is probably nothing is going to get done with transportation until there's a big demand for it. So it's sort of a cart before the horse thing. So I do feel the current infrastructure that we have is not going to support what we need in the future. It's doing a pretty good job of supporting what we're doing right now. Probably the best that it's going to be. But if we are spending more time in our cars, and people can't wrap their heads, because people need cars, right? People need cars to get around, and not just to and from the coffee shop in the morning, or to and from the office, or to and from the gym, but people like to go on road trips. People like to go camping. They like to tow their RVs. They like collecting cars. There's something fun about getting behind a wheel and driving, right? Like I do a lot of listening to books in my car, and that's the only time that I get a chance to listen to books. But people like the option to drive. So we're never going to eliminate cars altogether. Well, I'm not going to say never, but that is, one thing that we are certainly going to need more of is make public transportation more attractive, for one.
Mhm.
And then there's talks about, oh well, we need more hospitals and we need more schools, and there's no doubt about it. Like, we will need better equipment. We will need we'll need more space. But right now, we have a lot of space in our schools. But what we don't have are teachers. What we don't have are people willing to step into that role of the teacher, because teachers don't make a lot of money and it's expensive to live here. So, we need more doctors and lawyers available, closer by to, where we live, but we also need a good place for them to work. So we need more mixed use, multifamily residential and, retail or professional space, in order for people to eliminate their cars, work closer to home, provide opportunity for people that are going to be moving out there. So there
Mhm.
is a lot to consider. If we're attracting professional people away from the city to set up shop in a suburban area, then those people, they also want stuff to do. They want restaurants to go to. They want a place where they can live, and there's some entertainment, and it's not all about just living in one area and not having the ability to get to the amenities that you want. So all of that infrastructure will absolutely be required. um, as far as water and power, and there are certainly going to need to be upgrades, citywide, municipal wide, that we know aren't going to is currently not going to allow for the amount of housing that we need. So there is going to need to be work and infrastructure for, sewer, power, water, etc. That is going to, it's also going to need to be paid for by somebody. So the question comes to, okay, well, who is paying for these things? Is it
Right.
going to be all the taxpayers? Like in this case, it's a lot of the developers that are willing to take on these types of projects, that are paying big fees, DCC fees, development cost charges, ACCs, amenity cost charges, and it's actually really expensive for developers to build these multiplex units because of these soft costs and these levies that are put on them. And these are levies that go towards water, fire, parks, hospital, TransLink. These are private. These are being privately funded by developers that are uh, taking this single family lot, and they're building the 4 units or the 6 units on them, and it costs an arm and a leg. And that's part of the reason why it's not going to happen overnight, is because it's really expensive.
Right.
And quite often in Vancouver right now, where we are, if you are looking to build a multiplex unit or a fourplex unit, you're giving up about 144 square feet to BC Hydro if you're the first one on your block to build one for a 12-foot by 12-foot transformer. You're giving up your property to be allowed to build these things, and then your neighbors will be effectively be able to take advantage of the fact that you are giving up that land to hydro. So there's a lot of people that are exploring the idea. It sounds great, but when you get into the thoughts of it, and when your soft costs alone are $100 a square foot to to build these things, it becomes a real case of maybe it's not for me. Maybe it's not right now, until there's something that's going to be done. But the people that are jumping in and the people that are taking the leap are paying for a lot of this infrastructure privately to make updates to everything that we're talking about here.
And so, what role do you think developers, builders, policymakers, and community organizations should play in addressing the national gap of alleviating the housing crisis?
Yeah, well, it's going to be a collaborative approach for sure, and I don't have I don't have like the answer for you. What I know is
What?
what I know is there's no perfect solution. There are only trade-offs, and the question is, what are we going to be willing to trade? Right. So it's, communities need to speak up to their local governments about what they need. People are very quick to jump in and say what they don't want, but less people are willing to come forth with solutions as to what they do want to see. Right. So if you go through, I'm a part of a couple of Facebook forums and development forums and stuff, and community forums, and anytime there's a new something new that's introduced, you don't hear a lot of positive feedback. It's just, oh, we shouldn't do that. Here's the problem with this. Here's what's wrong, and there's not a lot of moving things forward.
Right.
There's not a lot of people that are coming forward with solutions as far as what they do want to see that are actually viable, but there is a lot of feedback as far as what people don't want. So communities need to speak up to their local governments, and they need to attend information forums, and they need to have a say as to um, what they want to see happen, and of course what they don't want to see happen. Otherwise, bylaws are going to be written, and once they're written, they're not going to change for a little while. So then you're going to be stuck with whatever the bylaws are. And right now we have an opportunity to speak up, to say what we want, to come up with solutions and work with our governing bodies. So, policymakers, they need to be open-minded. They need to really listen,
Mhm.
on their end as well. So if communities are coming forward, then it can't just be a smoke and mirrors or a dog and pony show. Policymakers, they really do need to listen to what the communities want in order for there to be buy-in. And as far as developers go, I mean, yeah, I mean, the same thing, right? They need to understand the communities that they're building in, where they're developing, what their community wants. There's a company here locally that I think has done a great job. I'm not going to name names, but they did a great job. They're trying to get a project off the ground, and there's a lot of pushback from a lot of people, and I understand why. But they took it to the community, where they set up tables, information sessions, say this is what we're trying. It was very interactive. They had layouts, they had building blocks, so you could, as on different tables, go around and take these building blocks and stack it and sort of see what it would look like, and have open discussions about it. So it is going to be a very collaborative approach. So keeping ears open, keeping minds open, keeping up good communication across all parties is where we're going to find these solutions that aren't super clear at this point.
Right. That's a great answer, Brandon. I just want to say a huge thank you for coming out today. And how would our viewers contact you to book an appointment or learn more about your services?
Yeah, absolutely. They can send an email to projects@newvisionprojects.com. They can find us on the socials at New Vision Projects. Probably the best way to get a hold of us. They can find us online. Our office is based in South Delta, so we're pretty easily found. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And awesome to work with, I have to say. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Pursuit 365's Home and Lifestyle Show. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and found inspiration to create your own beautiful, harmonious, and inspired spaces and lifestyles. Remember to subscribe for more tips and join us next time for another enriching discussion. This is Cara Lawson signing off. Until next time, keep living beautifully.